All right, welcome to today's episode of the Initial NBA podcast. I got a good one for you today. New Year's. It's been a while. Let's go ahead and do some power rankings. Right? We did it at the beginning of the season. And now's about the perfect time to revisit and kind of see where everyone is. I kind of throw teams in, different categories based on kind of their theme, I guess you could say. And then they're kind of ranked as well. So yeah, I guess let's just get into it. New Year's power rankings or tiers, call it whatever you want. I don't care. Um, First, so we're starting at 30. First group. This group I call the ninth circle of hell. This is the Detroit Pistons. There's one team in this group. It's the Detroit Pistons. This is the worst NBA team by far. This may be the worst team we've seen in years. Maybe since the process 76ers, probably. They may be worse than them. I don't know. I guess we'll see where the season goes. We knew they would be bad, but I don't think anyone really thought they'd be this bad. I think everyone was like, oh, they're going to be a bottom 5 team in the NBA. But for them to be number 30 and it's not even close, that's bad. Obviously, they went on a 28-game losing streak, tied for the longest, I think, in North American sports history, which is insane considering North American sports have been played for like 140 years when you talk about like baseball and stuff. So yeah, the 28-game losing streak is the lowest you could be as a professional sports team. They finally beat the Raptors a couple days ago. Honestly, they won. I think it was 129-127. The only reason they won is because the Raptors roster was kind of shot. Because they literally like the day before they made that trade with the Knicks trading OG, Anunoby and Malachi Flynn for RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. So there were a lot of obviously all of those guys would have been inactive. So they the Raptors kind of gifted the Pistons the win, so they didn't actually break the record. With that said, they at least have one bright spot. Cade Cunningham has pretty much been the only bright spot. Everyone else has pretty much been injured or disappointing. So Cade is really being dragged down. Cade's a baller, so I think he's fine, but the rest of that roster is where all of the issues lie. Team can't shoot for shit. It's the worst 3-point percentage team in the league. They don't know. They don't look like they know what they're doing on offense. Like I've tried to watch a couple quarters of their games, and they're throwing the ball away. The turnovers are bad. They can't hit shots. Their floor spacing is terrible. It's really rough in Detroit. And then also, I don't know how in the hell Monty Williams got to be the second highest paid coach in the NBA. I looked up. I was curious. Of the 30 active NBA coaches, he is the 20th best career win percentage as a coach, and no championship. So you think about the coaches in the NBA. If you're the number 2 highest paid NBA coach, I would think you're probably at least top 10 in general in terms of your career win percentage, right? Because you've proven that you can win. I don't think Monty Williams really hasn't done that. He's 20th out of 30, so he's in the bottom third in career win percentage as a coach. Yeah, sure, he brought the Suns to the NBA Finals a couple years ago, but then they got smoked. And how much of that is more because he was, he had Devin Booker and Chris Paul, and everyone likes to crap on DeAndre Ayton, but he's still pretty good. So yeah, it's crazy that he is the second highest paid coach in the NBA. Even talking about that Suns team, their path to the finals that year, they beat a bad Lakers team where AD was hobbled in the first round. It was not that Lakers team was not nearly as good as the one last year. They beat the Nuggets in the second round, who did not have Jamal Murray. And then they had a pretty rough supporting cast between around besides Aaron Gordon and MPJ and obviously Jokic. I don't know if you've watched any Nuggets since Jamal Murray, kind of in that in between time when between Jamal Murray tearing his ACL and Jamal Murray coming back. The supporting cast outside of Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., and Jokic, that team was terrible. They had they had like no business getting, winning the games they did a lot of times because Jokic had them on their back. And then, for the Western Conference Finals that year, the Clippers did not have Kawhi. So yeah, Monty Williams is a big issue, big reason why I think the Pistons are so bad. In addition to just the lack of talent. Um, they're obviously they were flirting with them. They're flirting with the most losses in a season all time. They still are. I think they're 3-30 right now, which would be what, a 9% win percent or something like that. So they're in the running to end the season with the most losses in a season all time, as well as the worst winning percentage for a season all time. Um, if you're curious, the most losses in a season all time, the 1973 76ers went 9-73. If you talk about, the Pistons are pretty much right on that pace. And then the worst winning percentage of all time, the Bobcats in 2012 went 7-59. That one is that record's weird because it was a lockout shortened season. But that ends up being the worst win percentage of all time. So, ninth circle of hell, number 30, Detroit Pistons. Next grouping, I have, how many teams are in this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 teams in this next grouping. This grouping is called bad, but at least we're not the Pistons. Number 29 with the Washington Wizards. Then we have 28 San Antonio Spurs, 27 Portland Trailblazers, 26 Charlotte Hornets, 25 Memphis Grizzlies, 24 Utah Jazz. All right, let's work down this list. So 29 Washington Wizards. The Jordan Poole experience is going about as good as you would expect. As in not great. What's kind of funny is I was looking at the stats. I was expecting Jordan Poole to kind of be the chucker on the team, just shooting everything. But it's funny that Kyle Kuzma is actually shooting the ball more than Jordan Poole. And he's at also a much higher usage rate than Jordan Poole, which to me is a little surprising. Just knowing Jordan Poole's game, I thought it would just be absolutely dominated by him. So, Kyle Kuzma's kind of been the go-to guy for the Wizards, which is good because he's also shooting at a much higher percentage. He's definitely a better player than Jordan Poole. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up trading Kyle Kuzma. He would have a lot of value on a lot of teams as a third or fourth option for sure. The Wizards, they're really bad, but again, at least they're not the Pistons. They have a couple pieces that they could do something with long term, whether they keep them or trade them. Kuzma, Gafford, Tyus Jones, there are guys that hold trade value for them. So I'm expecting some trades from them. Offload guys like DeLon Wright. Again, Kyle Kuzma, I think, is the big haul if you're doing business with the Wizards. So, I'm expecting the Wizards to do something, but they are the second worst team in the NBA. That's a tough team to watch too. Number 28, it was the San Antonio Spurs. Their claim to not being the Pistons is, hey, at least we have Wemby. They have They had an 18 game losing streak after starting the season 3-2, and which was 100% overlooked because of what was happening in Detroit. The Sochan point guard experience was not a great one. It seems to be over, which is good. It didn't work. They gave it a shot, and now they can kind of move on with their lives. I think they need a point guard. That's their issue. They have Wemby. They have a lot of young talent. They don't have a point guard to kind of get themselves in their offense. Which when you have a really young team, you have to have a point guard, preferably a veteran point guard, to help direct traffic with all these young guys that don't know what the hell they're doing. So it wouldn't surprise me, and I kind of hope they kind of go and grab like a middle of the road veteran point guard at the deadline to kind of help accelerate the growth of Wemby and their young core. Kind of teach them how to play basketball at the NBA level. So, guys like Malcolm Brogdon, Monte Morris when he's not hurt, guys like that, like those middle of the road, like kind of fringe starter guys, like the kind of the just really good, even keel, keep the tempo type of point guards. I do think the Spurs should kind of look for one of those to help accelerate the growth of their young guys. 27, I had the Portland Trailblazers. Scoot hasn't been as good as everyone has kind of hoped so far. I think long term he's probably going to be fine. But there were a lot of people that were like, hey, he's probably second or third in rookie of the year. I guess standings, if you will. He hasn't been that good. Yeah, I've watched a couple of Blazers games, and one of them, the game was pretty close in the fourth, and he was kind of just sitting on the bench. I would hope. I understand that Billups and the Blazers want to win, but I also think those situations are really good for a young player. Let him make his mistakes when the games really don't matter. So it's a little disappointing to see that he didn't play in crunch time in that one game. And again, it was just one game. Maybe it was just a weird thing he didn't play, but I can only go off of what I've seen, right? The loss of Robert Williams sucks for them, both because one, he can at least help him win a little bit, right? He's a veteran player, been in the league for I think 5 years at this point, been on some good teams, so I think he probably has a pretty good understanding of what it takes to actually win. But also, he would have demanded some trade value. There are definitely teams out there that can use just a solid, role player type of center, who would have been a good fit on a bunch of different teams that need some size on the inside. So it sucks he got hurt. Both for him personally, for the Blazers, both because he could help him win and because it kind of screws his trade value this season. Simons has been really good offensively, 27 points per game in 11 games so far. His issue's just been health. So yeah, the Blazers have some good talent. They, both talent they're going to keep in Scoot and Shaden Sharp and Simons and stuff. And then they have a bunch of other guys that, at least a couple other guys that I think are good enough where you can probably get some value out of them over this, the rest of the season at the trade deadline, like Jeremy Grant, Malcolm Brogdon, those types of guys. So no 27 Portland Trailblazers. 26. We have the Charlotte Hornets. I don't know what really to say here. Another year, another bad Hornets team. I feel like the Hornets are pretty much it's like Groundhog Day. Every year they're bottom 8 in the league. They have one or two guys that are really good or pretty decent or young or whatever. But then they just never can put it together. They're bad, but also it hasn't helped that kind of their three leading scorers have been hurt for decent stretches of the season, or not necessarily all hurt. LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier have both been hurt for like 10 to 15 games each. And then Bridges obviously had his whole thing, so he was suspended for the first 10 games of the year. So that contributes to the reason why the Hornets are so poor right now. I think they're 7-25, 7-24 is their current record. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say with Charlotte. They're bad. They've always been bad. It feels like I don't know really how they fix it. They always get these high draft picks, and while some of them end up being okay, they never really get the superstar, and they have a lot of trouble building around whatever young good talent they actually do get. So I guess hey, Charlotte just living in the 20s in the power rankings is just kind of where they live. All right, number 25. We have the Memphis Grizzlies here. This team has more talent than what would be considered the 25th best team in the NBA, for sure. Their issues, they've been decimated by injuries and suspensions, and they've had a really bad start to the year. Obviously, the John Morant suspension, they went 6-19 during that stretch. It's not good. Steven Adams is hurt. He's going to miss the whole season. Brandon Clark tore his Achilles in playoffs last year, so we'll see if he comes back. So they're hurting in the front court. Marcus Smart missed a handful of games in the middle there, right before Ja came back from suspension. So yeah, they've kind of been screwed just by injury luck in addition to Ja's dumbassery at the end of last season. With that said, since Ja came back from suspension, he's looked awesome. He hit that game winner, I think it was his first game back. And they're 4-2 since he came back. When he plays, he has missed he missed the game against Denver. I think he missed one other game recently too. So they definitely have the talent to maybe make a little bit of a push. They started 4-0 when Ja came back, and then he sat versus Denver. It's been downhill from there. But I have my concerns and my doubts with their team just in general, just because of health reasons. And they're in kind of a hole already. Right now, they are 13th in the West right now, and it looks like they are 4 games behind the 12 spot. And actually, with the play-in, they would need to hit the 10 spot. So you're talking 6 games behind right now. The Lakers in the 10 spot. So there's a little bit of a climb to even get into the play-in, but they have the talent to do it as long as Ja is healthy and stays out of trouble, I guess. Because they still have reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Jaren Jackson Jr. They have Marcus Smart, who is the Defensive Player of the Year before that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I think they do end up in kind of the 8 to 12 range by the time the season ends. I think they probably make the play-in. If I were to put money on it, which I don't really do that, I would say they probably end up in that like 8-9 seed to make the play-in. And then at that point, who the hell knows what happens? 24, the last one in this group that, hey, we're at least we're not the Pistons. The Utah Jazz. They're not great, but they at least have some bright spots, and they have an all-star in Lauri Markkanen. So that's good for them. It wouldn't surprise me if they do move some of their vets, Jordan Clarkson, Olynyk, maybe Lauri Markkanen, maybe depending on the offer. They're at least a couple of years away from competing. Just because you look at guys like Keontae George, Walker Kessler, they're both super young. Those are probably their 2 best young players. And a lot of their older guys would carry some value, probably get more picks back. Obviously, Markkanen would carry the most value, and would fetch a decent haul. But he's also younger and kind of fits into that time frame. I think he's only 25, so. If you think about a Jazz rebuild, let's just say it takes them 3 to 4 years to become, solid playoff, really good team. That puts Markkanen at like 29, 30. So that's definitely not outside of the window. And then also congrats to Jordan Clarkson, the first triple-double in the Utah Jazz have had since I think 2007, I wanted to say. I was like, damn, that's a long time without a triple-double at all by a Jazz player. So hooray for that. Good for them. All right. Next group, 2 teams in the next group, number 23 and 22. This is the group we don't even know what we're doing. That's the group name. We don't even know what we're doing. So at 23, we have the Toronto Raptors. 22, the Chicago Bulls. Toronto Raptors, obviously Scotty Barnes is taking the leap we were kind of expecting last year, and he is 100% the Raptors' future. The rest of the roster, it's hard to know what the plan is, though I think we learned this last weekend what it looks like the plan is going to be. They finally did make a move. They traded OG Anunoby and Malachi Flynn to the Knicks for Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. I might as well just do this tangent now, talking about this trade. I like this trade for the Raptors. I really like Emmanuel Quickley. And RJ Barrett is fine, but he's still super young, right? So you hope there's, he has a lot of potential. And he scores a lot of points. There's just like holes, other parts of his game that have some pretty big holes in it, right? OG Anunoby's been on the trade block, feels like for 6 years. I know it hasn't been that long, but it feels like it's been that long. So for them to just finally just make a move, I'm like, thank God we don't have to keep talking about OG Anunoby to every team in the NBA. Obviously the Knicks got the best player in this trade. They got OG Anunoby. He's the best player in the trade. In a year, Emmanuel Quickley might be the best player in this trade. So that's why I like this for the Raptors. They ended up, I think, getting long-term the best player in this trade. They were still able to get another good piece in RJ Barrett to kind of replace Anunoby from a positional perspective. Again, Emmanuel Quickley, a really good point guard that I think he's damn good. For the Knicks, I get why they did it, I guess. I think they gave up a little too much. Again, like I said, OG's a better player now. Emmanuel Quickley's a better player later. To me, the Knicks lost this even though they got the better player. And honestly, I would kind of hope the Knicks make another move, because if this is it, then I don't know if you're doing much in the playoffs just adding OG Anunoby to Brunson and Julius Randle. Especially when you lose, who I thought was going to be the 6th man of the year off the bench. So, I would give this trade probably like a B+ for the Raptors, because I think they probably could have gotten more potentially, but it's not like they got a bad haul. For the Knicks, I put this like a C. So yeah, there's a little tangent on the Raptors next trade from this last weekend. But yeah, I mean, for the Raptors in general, it seems like they've been in trade talks for 2 years. Uh, I'm not sure what they could accomplish by keeping kind of the rest of their veteran guys in Siakam, Pirtle, Schroeder, since you could probably get some good assets out of at least two of those guys. I don't know about Schroeder, but definitely Siakam and Pirtle. So I would expect them to do more wheeling and dealing. Them moving OG tells me that hey, they're finally hitting the reset button. So I mean, I guess we'll see what the Raptors do. Masai Ujiri, he's kind of a wild card when it comes to this kind of stuff. So we'll see what happens. The other thing with them, Grady Dick, he hasn't really played since mid-November, like barely played. No injury. If you're not good, why the hell aren't you playing your lottery picks? If you're on like if you're a bad team, play the lottery picks. Figure out what you got. Like if you play him and he falls on his face, then you know, hey, going forward, I think we're good, right? We know what we have in him. But now it's gonna, if he's gonna ride the bench, not even gonna get bench minutes. At least put him in the rotation, right? Make him, let him fuck up for 15, 18 minutes a game, right? If you're gonna develop a guy, like at least figure out like if he can actually play. So that's been questionable for me. And this is gonna be my thing always. Like if you're a lottery pick and your team is projected to be outside the playoff picture, it makes zero sense why those guys aren't playing at least 15 to 20 minutes a game. Might as well see how they react to NBA basketball. And it's kind of throwing them to the fire a little bit, but hey, you're a professional now. Like that's the deal. Number 22, we have the Chicago Bulls. So when a team has a players only meeting after getting blown out in the season opener, that's generally not a great sign for the rest of the season. The Bulls were really bad to start the season. They were probably in the hey, at least we're not the Pistons range. But recently they've been surprisingly good. Part of it's because Kobe White broke out. He's really good. he's I think he might be a really good player. Which it's coincided, and I don't know if this is probably just like a coincidence. Maybe it's not. I don't want to say one way or another. It's coincided with Zach LaVine being out with an injury. So I guess take with that what you will. I do expect the Bulls to move at least a couple guys at the deadline. LaVine, there's already been reports that LaVine and the Bulls are kind of mutually agreed, hey, let's look for something new for LaVine, which again, I think makes total sense for the Bulls. They're not going to win anything this year. I think Caruso is going to be a very hot commodity for any contending team that would like a little more perimeter defense. Those are invaluable guys, those 3-and-D type of guys. DeRozan probably carries a decent amount of value. It's just his contract is huge. I don't know if Vucevic really carries much value because, again, his contract's really big, but he's not all that great anymore. So, yeah, Chicago Bulls, I mean, I don't know what they're doing. Of all the teams, I don't know what the Chicago Bulls are doing. Toronto at least is kind of showing their hand a little bit. Chicago, can you just do something? Like, you're not going to win. Just let's just start over here. The fans of Chicago deserve it, man. I know they probably sold their soul for Michael Jordan championships in the 90s, but come on, it's just been rude. It's been rude to their fans. I feel bad for Chicago fans. All right, next grouping. This group is, hey, we may be better than we thought. I have the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn Nets at 21, the Houston Rockets at 20, Indiana Pacers at 19. This group and the next group, you could probably do some mixing around, and I wouldn't complain too much. But this is where I put them for this exercise. So 21, the Brooklyn Nets. Then hey, the Nets aren't terrible. Hey, who would have thought? It's good. I don't think we expected the Nets to be a bottom 5 team in the league. But I think they're kind of punching above their weight right now. They're in the play-in as of right now. They're the 9 seed at 15 and 18. They at one point they were 3 games over 500 and kind of firmly in playoff position. They kind of slipped a little bit since then. But I mean, Cam Thomas can put the ball in the basket, which is the objective of the game of basketball. So that's a pretty good trait to have. Mikal Bridges is probably one of my favorite all around NBA players. You can just do a little bit of everything: play defense, shoot the three, score, do everything. Cam Johnson's good. Nick Claxton's a really good defensive player. There's a lot of stuff I like in Brooklyn. I don't know if they really have the it guy, that number one option. I think Mikal Bridges, who is their best player, is probably more of a number two. Cam Johnson, while he's a scorer, is probably more of like a Jamal Crawford-esque type of player, not really a, Dame Lillard, James Harden type of scorer. But still, there's a lot to like in Brooklyn. They have a good base to kind of work around. Then the other Brooklyn note I have, hey, Ben Simmons is hurt again. That's pretty much par for the course at this point. I was hoping to see a Ben Simmons resurgence because the talent is crazy. It's just the injuries have screwed him, and then it's the whole attitude thing. It seems like he just doesn't want to get better, which is insane to me. If you're getting paid to play a professional sport, I mean, I know people will be like, "You're just talking shit." Well, it's been 6 years and he still doesn't have a jump shot. It's wild to me. And that goes for anybody that has played in the league for 6 years and they still can't shoot a jumper. It's crazy. All right, number 20, Houston Rockets. I could probably have them a little higher. I like the Rockets, what they're doing. They have slipped a little bit. At one point, I think they were a 3 seed in the West. Right now, they're number 9. They're 16 and 15. But I like what they're doing. They have one of the best defenses in the NBA. They have Alperen Sengun, who will be a future All NBA guy. Is that crazy? I don't think that's crazy. He's really good. Then their young guys are playing pretty well. Then they have those like kind of vets you need to kind of complement the young guys. It remains to be seen if long term if Sengun is number one option or if he probably fits more as number two. But Houston kind of could sneakily steal the 6th seed if they kind of continue to build on what they've done so far this season. Yeah, I like Houston. They're good. They're fun. They beat my Nuggets, I think, twice already, and that makes me sad, but there's a reason. They're pretty good. Number 19, Indiana Pacers. Pacers is super fun. Yeah, their defense sucks, but they have the best offense in the NBA. And then probably have one of the 2 most exciting young players in the NBA. Like the guys that are making like superstar leaps when you talk about Tyrese Halliburton. The other guy in the league is Anthony Edwards, if you wanted to know. The Pacers will probably make the play-in. If they make it to the playoffs, they'll probably lose in 4 or 5 games. But they're a fun-ass team, and there's a lot to be excited about going forward. Obviously, they made it to the in-season tournament final. They have Tyrese Halliburton. I think in the last couple of days, has had 2 straight games with 20 points and 20 assists, which is ridiculous. So yeah, I like the Pacers. 19 might be a little too high for them because their defense blows, but you know what? I'm going to go for fun factor here. They're number 19 in my rankings. Next group, and this kind of coincides with the group of 4. This group is called "We're Not as Good as We Thought We'd Be." These ones you could probably argue some of these guys lower. I wouldn't fight too hard with it, but just so my groupings fit, I put them here. So number 18 we have the Atlanta Hawks, number 17 the Golden State Warriors, number 16 the Cleveland Cavaliers, number 15 the Los Angeles Lakers. Atlanta Hawks at 18. Honestly, I have them at 18 kind of to fit my groupings. I think they're probably more in like the 22 to 25 range if I'm being completely honest. It felt like they'd be better coming into the season with Quinn Snyder as head coach, but they've been super disappointing. They're sitting 11th in the East right now at 13 and 19. They've had some injuries, but nothing super insane. Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter have both missed some kind of larger stretches. But I mean, Trae Young, DeJounte Murray have played, I think, almost every game. So there's not much excuse missing 2 role players. A lot of teams have missed 2 role players, I think Atlanta probably at this point should be in that top 5 of teams that are most likely to sell. I think Murray is probably pretty movable. We'll bring back a decent haul. Probably recoup at least some of what Atlanta gave to the Spurs to get him. I think Clint Capella could probably be moved in order to get their backup center a little more time. So yeah, I mean, I'm Atlanta, not very good. I have them at 18. I think they probably are more like 23. Let's just put it this way: I would take the Rockets, the Pacers, and probably the Bulls, or definitely the Grizzlies over them right now. Number 17, Golden State Warriors. I think this would be a bottom 5 team in the NBA without Steph Curry. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I think they would be a bottom 5 team in the NBA without him. Draymond's suspension hurts a lot because he does a lot for that team that isn't really seen. A lot of stuff that is seen, but a lot of stuff that isn't seen. Pretty much the entire team has been below average to bad. Klay Thompson is not the Klay Thompson of old. He has a game or two every couple of weeks where he kind of turns back the clock a little bit, but outside of that, it's been rough. Andrew Wiggins, I don't know what the hell's going on there. It's been not great. Chris Paul is 38 at this point, or 39. He's in his late 30s, which he's probably doing about as good as you would expect for someone in their late 30s. Looney is Looney. He's fine. He's a serviceable NBA player. Their roster is just not good. Steph Curry is the reason why they right now are sitting 11th in the West and 15 and 17. Like, I'm telling you, Steph Curry. I took a look at the win shares the other day for Steph Curry, and I think he was at like a 3 point something for the season. I don't remember what the actual number was, but it was below 4, and I'm like, there's no way that Steph Curry's only good for 4 wins so far this season. It feels like it should be higher. Maybe I need to look more into how those statistics are calculated and stuff, but I think this team is, instead of 15 and 17, I think without Steph Curry, they're probably like 6 and 26. I don't know if anyone wants to hear it, but I think that's how good Golden State is, which is to say not good. I wouldn't surprise me if they do end up making one last all-in move at the deadline to take advantage of kind of that last couple years of prime Steph. You kind of have to, right? Go after a guy like DeRozan or Markkanen or Levine or whoever's on the market, right? Siakam maybe. I think I've seen that rumored actually. It wouldn't surprise me if they do end up moving for one of those guys and just kind of offload the rest of their young guys. Kuminga, Moody, just to make one last run with this core group. And then if it doesn't work, then at that point, it's probably time to do an actual reset. So Golden State Warriors, they're not very good. They're in this weird in-between phase. It wouldn't surprise me if they try to go all in, and then it just fails spectacularly. Because those usually just tend not to work. 16, Cleveland Cavaliers. Right now, they're sitting 8th in the East, which is lower than I would have expected. I think before the season, I put them 4th in the East. And honestly, I probably should have looked at that podcast again, but I didn't. I had them 4th in the East. I'm thinking behind Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly, which kind of felt like the right spot. I think last year they were 4 or 5 seed. I think they were 4th seed. Beat the Knicks in the first round. They are very disappointing. Injuries aren't helping. Garland, has missed some extended time and continues to miss some time with a jaw fracture. And then Mobley had knee surgery. So he's out at least I think for another month. Strus has been better than I expected, to be honest. So good for him. He's definitely one of those guys where you think like, oh hey, he was a Miami undrafted guy. He's gonna suck everywhere else. He's actually been good. So good for him. Donovan Mitchell's been, Donovan Mitchell, one of the better shooting guards in the NBA. But I just can't get past the fit on this team. I just hate it. I hate it. I hate the fit of Allen and Mobley in the front court. Neither one of those guys can spread the floor. They're basically both centers. Um, the only reason the two center thing right now is working in Minnesota is because Karl Anthony Towns can spread the floor. Neither Jared Allen or Evan Mobley can spread the floor. Yeah, they're great defensively and that's awesome. But like, if you can't score, what the hell does it matter if you can play good interior defense? Um, so yeah, I have them at 16. Um, there's been rumblings about a potential Donovan Mitchell trade. I'm not sure it's gonna happen. But I mean, if things really go south, recently record or in the next month or so, record wise, I can see it happening. So I guess hold on for that, see what happens. Cleveland is a very interesting situation right now. Um, right now they're 18 and 15. So just kind of barely above 500. Yeah, I guess let's just monitor that, see what happens. Come back in a month, see where Cleveland's at. Because it might be time to move somebody. Honestly, I would move Jared Allen today. Not because I don't like Jared Allen. I actually really like Jared Allen as a player. He just, to me, it's not a great basketball fit. And if you're choosing between Allen and Mobley, Allen's the one that has to go. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with Cleveland. I expect them to make a move. It wouldn't surprise me. It's just the question is who ends up moving. Number 15, we have the Los Angeles Lakers, your in-season tournament champs, Los Angeles Lakers. However, since winning the IST, it's been rough for you boys. When I wrote all of my notes up, there were 3-7 since. I think they've actually lost a game or two. In addition to that, since. So yeah, they've had a rough time. Since winning the IST, they're 3-8 since. It's not even really an injury thing. Like a lot of these teams that are having, poor injury or, poor seasons so far, in most cases it's injury related. A key rotation piece is out, your second, third best player is out. Some cases your best player is out. Sometimes it's been suspension reasons in the case of John Morant and Draymond Green. Lakers aren't having those issues. Gabe Vincent's really their only rotation guy that's kind of missed any significant amount of time. They're just playing bad. There's really no two ways around it. I know there was that LeBron 3 where his toe was on the line, barely like by millimeters, but it was on the line. But it just seems like they've kind of had some poor luck like that. When you talk about the Lakers, they're 100% going to make some move on the trade deadline. The D'Angelo Russell contract was tailor made to trade it come February or late January. So I 100% expect him to be moved. You're working with a 39-year-old LeBron James and a 30-year-old Anthony Davis. The window is closing. If you intend to win with those two guys, you need to do something. And the Lakers and LeBron James have not been shy about doing something when they feel like they need to. So Lakers have been bad. They've been playing poorly. I do expect them to do something. All right, next group. There are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4 teams in this group. This group I'm calling we might be good for an upset in the playoffs. So these are all teams that are pretty good that I don't think have any real like conference finals aspirations. But in the first round they can upset somebody. So be careful. So at 14 we have the New Orleans Pelicans, 13 we have the New York Knicks, 12 the Orlando Magic, 11 the Dallas Mavericks. So the Pelicans at 14, they have a bunch of good pieces. Obviously Zion, Ingram, Herb Jones. I like McCollum. Alvarado is a scrappy guy. I don't know if they really have a reliable first option. Zion's kind of struggled a little bit. He's had some ups and downs for sure. His struggles with his conditioning is kind of well documented and pretty obvious. They have a good bench. They don't have a point guard, man. They don't have a true starting point guard. I think they've been kind of trying McCollum in that role. To me, McCollum's a shooting guard. So yeah, I think their issues they need a point guard. I don't know who that is. I'm gonna be honest. But I think as long as Zion kind of struggles with his conditioning and is struggles with his consistency, and as long as I don't really have a true starting point guard, I think the ceiling for them is getting to the second round. So Pelicans are a decent team, but I there's things I do not like about them. 13 had the New York Knicks. Similar to Pelicans, this is a good team, not a great team. They definitely upgraded their starting five, essentially swapping RJ Barrett for OG Anunoby. Gives them more shooting, better defense. Obviously, OG scores less, but he probably impacts the game much more, especially defensively. With that said, they also, their bench took a huge step back, losing Emmanuel quickly as part of that deal. So, come playoff time, I guess, maybe you value having like a much better starting unit over having a bench that can probably beat almost any in the NBA. So I guess we'll see what happens there. Overall, I think the Knicks got slightly worse as a whole, even though they did get the best player in the deal. And then again, like I said earlier in the pod when we were talking about the Raptors, I think quickly ends up being a better player than OG Anunoby overall here in the next year or two. Like I said, I don't think the Knicks are done making moves. Mitchell Robinson injury sucks for them. I think if I were them, I'd probably make a move for one of these big men out there to shore up the front court. But I guess we'll see what happens. So Knicks at 13. They could probably beat someone in the first round. Again, second round is probably where I'd put their ceiling. Orlando Magic at 12. Hey, this is the team we wanted. This is the team we were hoping for. Paulo and Franz are awesome. They're fourth in the East right now at 19 and 13. They have a bunch of good role players. The question is with them, do they make a move? Like, do they think they're good enough to make a push this year? That's always a question with these really good young teams, and there's another one obviously we're going to talk about once we get to the the 5 to 8 range. But with these young teams that have at least two future like cornerstones, and when I say cornerstones, like potential multi all-star, at least one of these guys is the best player on a championship team. It does kind of bring up like, do they go ahead and make a move now? Do they get greedy and try to like push for like an Eastern Conference Finals or even an NBA Finals appearance this year? Or do they kind of stay patient? They're winning at a good clip. They probably aren't winning the championship this year anyway. But they're on a really good trajectory. So honestly, I don't know if there's really a bad answer here. I mean, Orlando, I would probably lean towards kind of just chilling. And they're on a good trajectory. They have a lot of young pieces. Just let them develop for one more year, and then next year, kind of try to make that splash move, or do something next trade deadline. So, 12 Orlando Magic, I love them. They're great. Really good defense. But with their youth and inexperience, they're probably only good for a first round upset, and that's about it. Number 11, Dallas Mavericks. This one is thank God for Luka. He has been ridiculous. Outside of that, the rest of the team is meh. They're very meh, including Kyrie. I'm not a Kyrie fan, so whatever, you can call me a hater, I don't care. They're just very meh. The reason I have them in this category and not lower is because even though the rest of their team is very meh in average, I think, it is enough to upset someone in the first round of the playoffs if Luka is giving 50-point triple doubles, which he's been doing. So it's kind of like the Mavericks team that's been the last couple of years, where there's pieces of their supporting cast. You're like, oh, this is okay, and then it all comes down eventually to just Luka being amazing, and that's about what they're hanging their hat on. If he has a bad game, the Mavericks are getting blown up by 30. Tell you what. I don't like their defense, and they've kind of cooled off. At one point, they were first in the West, I think. Right now, they're sitting 7th at 19 and 15. But that offense is going to keep them in a lot of games, and more specifically, Luka Doncic is going to keep them in a lot of games because that guy's nuts. The only reason he's not, I haven't done MVP rankings. The only reason he's not a top 3 MVP is because there are 3 other guys in the NBA that are playing absolutely out of their minds. Next group, and this is the second to last group. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams in this group. This group I called almost contenders, but we're missing something. So these guys I think are almost there. They're almost in that contender tier. But there's still just something. There's just a little thing that I think they need to fix in order to get there. So at 10 we have the Sacramento Kings. At 9 the Miami Heat. 8 the Phoenix Suns. 7 the OKC Thunder. 6 the Los Angeles Clippers. Sacramento Kings. This feels like pretty much the same team from last year, which isn't a bad thing, right? They were 3rd in the West. They lost in the first round, but it was also a lot of those guys' first foray into playoffs. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into that. They're similar to from last year. They're really good. They have a decent chance of making the second round. They would probably be favored in pretty much any first round matchup for the most part. With that said, I think Sabonis is awesome, but it feels like they need something better, which is weird because Sabonis I think is like a top 4 or 5 center in the NBA. But like his defensive deficiencies are tough to get around. And he's not on the same level as a guy like Jokic, who, while does have some defensive deficiencies, has actually gotten a lot better over the last couple years. So yeah, I mean, I like the Kings a lot. I feel like they just need one little piece, and I don't really know what that piece is. It just feels like that piece is a defensive-minded big to complement Sabonis offensively. Some power forward, like maybe it's Jared Allen. Sabonis is able to kind of space the floor a little bit, but if you get Jared Allen, then you're probably compromising a lot of Sabonis' work that he does in the post. So I don't know. I guess we'll see, but I feel like the Kings need someone in the front court, someone defensive minded in the front court to kind of get them to that next step up. Number 9, the Miami Heat. Jaime Jaquez Jr. has probably been the 3rd best rookie this year, maybe even 2nd. I think you could argue Jaquez as the 2nd best rookie this year after Chet. It's him, Chet, and Wemby. Those have been the best 3. And the reason I may put him second is because I think, obviously Miami's winning, whereas Wemby's team sucks. Probably no fault of Wemby, but if you consider that, I think Jaquez Jr. has probably been the 2nd best rookie. That dude's nuts. He's so good. He plays like he's been in the league for 8 years. It's awesome. So yeah, this is classic Miami, doing less with more. They do this every year. I don't know why we're ever surprised. Never count this team out. It's insane. They've been able to play through injuries. I think almost everyone has missed a handful of games. Almost everyone on their team has missed a handful of games. And right now they're sitting 5th in the East at 19 and 14. I still feel like, in terms of like missing pieces, I still feel like they need a point guard to move into that contender tier. Their starter right now is a 37-year-old Kyle Lowry. That doesn't move me at all. He's been good, right? I think he's shooting like over 40% from 3. He's going to be annoying defensively, right? But he's not the Kyle Lowry of 5 years ago. So I would, if I were the Heat, I would prefer to grab a starting point guard if you can, like maybe DeJounte Murray, maybe, and then move Kyle Lowry to the bench and go that route. So the Heat, again, I think they are in the market for some guard help. We'll see what happens. Miami's doing Miami things. They're really good. Not much to complain about if you're a Miami fan. Number 8, I had the Phoenix Suns. This team has been the biggest. This team. They've been the biggest tease in the NBA this year. As of right now, and I pulled these numbers I think yesterday, so maybe that changed today. I don't know, but as of right now or yesterday, I want to pull these numbers. Beal, Durant, and Booker. They have started 4 total games together and played a grand total of 64 minutes together. So you're talking about a team where they are 33 games into their season. Their 3 best players have played 1/8 of those games together for a grand total of 64 minutes. They are right now number 8 in the West at 18 and 15. They probably don't deserve to be this high, honestly. At number 8, I think a lot of this is just this one is still like, but Durant, Booker, Beal, like it's the what could have been or what potentially could be type of thing. But yeah, it's been disappointing. And I'm not super convinced they have the right pieces around that big three. For a deep playoff run, like they just don't have a point guard, man. This is another team. They're just with all the talent in the NBA, it just feels like there's not enough point guards. Is that crazy? It feels like that. I don't know. It's weird. Um, so I think they need a point guard. Like Grayson Allen's fine. Moving Nurkic for Ayton was a mistake. I think Ayton is a way better player than Nurkic. I don't love having my defense rely on a Kevin Durant, Yusuf Nurkic front court combo defensively. You're gonna get smoked if that is your if that's your starting front court in the playoffs. You're gonna get smoked. By a lot of bigs in the NBA. Obviously KD offensively is amazing, defensively is average, right? Nurkic, when the trade happened, people were like, "Oh, they're upgrading defensively," and I could tell all those people had never watched him play. I watched him when he was in Denver for 3 years, and he's really big, but he is not a good defensive player. So yeah, number 8, Phoenix Suns. They're a tease. This ranking reflects them still being a tease. Number 7, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder. They've been one of the best teams in the NBA. You can't argue that. I can't argue that. No one can argue that. The only reason I do not have them in the contender tier, the next tier up, is just because of their youth and lack of playoff experience. The team is super young. I don't know if anyone on their team has been to the playoffs. I actually haven't looked. I think maybe Davis Bertans is like the only one. But regardless, super young team. But they are probably the most talented team in the NBA from top to bottom. Their starting lineup is nuts. Chet's gonna win Rookie of the Year. Wemby's amazing, but I don't think you can argue how Chet has contributed to his team's success with them right now, sitting at number 2 in the West at 22-9. That's nuts. SGA is a top 3 MVP candidate. I think he's in that top 3. He has to be in that top 3 with Embiid and Jokic. I don't, maybe Luka could probably get thrown in that top 3 if you really wanted to, but I think SGA for me is a top 3 candidate. I love OKC. They're really good. I hate that they're in my division. I hate the Nuggets are gonna have to beat them in the playoffs. But here we are. With that said, I don't think it would hurt if they go get a veteran guy at the deadline. I don't think they have to make a big splash move, right? I don't think they have to go get a DeRozan or a Levine or a Mitchell or anyone like that. I mean, they certainly could, but I don't think they have to. But I do think a guy that's been to the playoffs to help them prepare and get ready would be very beneficial for them. They have a billion picks over the next decade, so you might as well use some, right? You might as well burn some of them and get somebody back that can, maybe come off the bench or maybe be kind of your 5th starter, replacing Giddey, who's kind of struggled this year. With that said, I mean, you could also just kind of ride it out. Like, they are so young and so talented. This is one of the few situations where a young team, I'm like, maybe. Like, they may not need that playoff experience necessarily to make a deep run, just because of how talented they are. So this is kind of one of the few cases where I don't really have strong opinions either way on what they should do. Usually I'm like, no, they should sell, or no, they should buy. Like, I usually am pretty firm on what a team should do kind of moving into the trade deadline. But this one, I don't think there's a wrong answer, because I think they have a bunch of viable options that make sense, because they are just so damn talented. They're going to be able to, if they screw up whatever they decide to do over the next couple months, like in terms of trades and deals and stuff, they have so much talent, they're going to be fine. So I like OKC a lot. I have them at number 7. Number 6, the Clippers. This one actually legitimately physically hurts me to put them here. I after a rough start to the James Harden era, they've figured out a bunch of things and looks really good. I hate that I have to say that because I was not convinced it was going to work out. And truthfully, I'm still not convinced in the playoffs it's going to work out. But the regular season, at least right now, they're 20-12. I think they lost their first 5 games with Harden. So seemed to work out. Moving Russell Westbrook to the bench seemed to work out. They've really been relatively healthy, which is good for them, given Kawhi and PG and Harden are all very much injury risks, right? Russell isn't. Russell Westbrook is an Iron Man. He'll play. He could play till he's 50 and still be the most athletic dude on the court, and not get hurt. But the other guys, there's a lot of injury risk there. So like I said, I don't really have faith in this team making a deep playoff run, but they're still really good right now. I will see if they have more moves to make. I'm not outside of the whole playoff thing, right? I'm not really convinced of their front court depth. At least not while Plumlee is still out. Zubats is fine. He's pretty good. But I mean, outside of that, I don't know who their bigs are. I don't like their bigs. If Plumlee is healthy, they're fine. But otherwise, they could make a move for a big guy. And kind of have that insurance policy for Plumlee because he seems to kind of miss a decent number of games as well. So yeah, with this team, when they're healthy, they're really good. Again, I hate saying that. But the injury risk with his team is higher than any team in the NBA. I don't really think that can be argued. So there's that to consider. So we'll see what happens. Good for them. They've kind of figured some things out. I just personally do not have the long-term faith, so I have them at 6. All right, we are at the creme de la creme, right? The true contenders. Number 5, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. Trading James Harden and letting Tyrese Maxey shine, 100% the right move. Philly is way better this year than they were last year. Maxey's amazing. Embiid is top 2 MVP candidate, probably the lead right now over Jokic. That hurts too to say. They still have the whole can't get out of the second round thing. At least Embiid does. The team is really good though. I think they have the right mix of guys with Embiid and Maxey as kind of your 2 main scorers. You have a lot of pretty good role players in Tobias Harris. People like to crap on him, but he's a serviceable role player. They just I like Philadelphia a lot. So yeah, number 5, Philly. Let's go. Number 4, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. Their defense has taken a step back, 100% since last year. But has gotten better over the last month or so. And their offense is awesome. I think they're number 2 rated offense in the NBA, something like that. The Dame Giannis combo is pretty much what we thought it would be from an offensive standpoint, which is to say it's awesome. They have some really good complementary pieces I like a lot. Lopez, Middleton, Bobby Portis, big fan of that. What was it, Pat Connaughton? They have some really good role players. But honestly, the Dame Giannis combo is what's going to carry them, as far as they'll go, right? It is disappointing to see the defense take a step back, but also it's not surprising given Dame Lillard is traditionally been a terrible defensive player. He's a smaller guy, right? It's a size thing for him. It may be part of its effort, but I think for him it's mostly a size thing rather than a want to or anything like that. So yeah, I fully expect an Eastern Conference Finals appearance out of Milwaukee. I like their roster. I think it'll be them and Boston kind of in the end, fighting to get into the finals. Number 3, I have the Denver Nuggets. Surprise, surprise. They're the defending champs. Minimal roster turnover. You can't really argue against that, right? Jokic is an MVP candidate. Right now he's probably number 2. I personally would have him number 1, but I also watch him every night. So I'm a little bit biased there. The bench has looked a lot better lately, in the month of December. They lost Jeff Green and Bruce Brown to free agency. And coming into the season, that was like the talking point. Like, wow, their bench took a big hit losing those two guys. There's definitely been games where the bench has been rough, but um, overall, I'm actually really impressed with how a lot of their young guys on the bench have kind of stepped up. Reggie Jackson has had he was bad last year after the Nuggets traded for him. This season he's been really good. He is. I went from crap, we re-signed Reggie Jackson, that sucks, to like, you know what, I trust Reggie Jackson with my life. Like, that's kind of the flip I've made over the last 2 months of the season. Especially like that Clippers game where him and DeAndre Jordan just killed the Clippers in this pick and roll when pretty much everyone was out. Like no Jokic, no Murray. I don't think AG played in that game either. Like we were missing our top 3 players, and Reggie Jackson said, "Hold up, bro, I got this." And him and DeAndre Jordan just started throwing lobs and stuff. It was amazing. Anyway, back to their bench. Yeah, Reggie Jackson's been balling. He's been leading the second unit. It's been great. There are definitely times where I'm like, "Can you pass the ball, please?" But then he bails you out with a 3. And that's why he's called big government, I guess. Peyton Watson. Okay, if you haven't watched a Nuggets game, go watch Peyton Watson play fucking basketball. Okay, he is taking a huge leap. He is already one of the better, if not the best, wing shot blockers in the NBA. At least 1 or 2 a game, he will have a weak side block on a guy that thinks he's wide open for a layup, and he will send that into the 5th row. It's incredible. Then in December, he shot like 40% from 3. He's been hitting his threes at a really high clip. If he becomes a consistent 3-point shooter, he will be the best 3-and-D player in the NBA. No bias from me. This is just facts, okay? Not only that, but he's 21, and I think at this point, I think this season he's played more minutes than he did his entirety in college, his entirety of last year, and I think a lot of high school. So, I love Peyton Watson. He has been the most surprising and the most welcoming surprise for the Nuggets bench. Christian Brown's been good. He hasn't been great. I thought we probably expected a little bit more of a leap from him, probably unfairly. But he's been solid defensively, and his 3-pointer, I think he's shooting 40% from 3 for the season. So he's doing essentially what he's probably not as good as we all hoped, but I think we got a little crazy in our expectations of him. He's been good this season. Don't let anyone fool you. Christian Brown has made really big, important improvements that maybe aren't quite as obvious as what we were hoping. And that's fine because he's like 22 or 23, right? So he's going to continue to get better. So that's enough about the Nuggets bench. The other thing is, obviously Jokic has been Jokic. MPJ, has been kind of the same. AG's been kind of the same. KCB's kind of been really good defensively. And then he's been shooting the 3 pretty well, so he's been about the same. With the Nuggets, it's pretty much down to, can Jamal Murray stay healthy? Obviously Jokic is the star. He's the best player on the team. He's the best player in the league. He's the MVP candidate, whatever. Jamal Murray's almost equally as important. So just to put that in context, this season, when Murray is playing, the Nuggets are 16-5. Murray also missed 14 games. The Nuggets were 8-6 in that stretch. So him staying healthy is key because, as good as Jokic is, he needs that other primary ball handler, scorer, like all-star level kind of guy to kind of feed off of. Because we see plenty of times where Jokic is just passive for a bunch of reasons, right? Like last night in the game, he just seemed like he just wanted to get everyone else involved, and that's great. And, during the regular season, go for it, Jokic. I'm cool with it. I don't care if you decide not to shoot 1 game or 2 games or whatever. Like, because I know in the playoffs he'll come, but in those games where Jokic is kind of being more passive scoring wise, again, not to crap on Jokic because that's not what it is. He's choosing to play a game a different way. They need Jamal Murray to play in those games and to score well in those games. because their scoring needs to come from somewhere. And AG and KCP and MPJ, they are all pretty one-dimensional scorers. KCP and MPJ, they both essentially shoot threes. MPJ can drive to the basket a little bit, but he really doesn't like doing it. Aaron Gordon, he is a dunker spot, pick and roll, that type of guy, at catching lobs. He will shoot a three occasionally, but I have seen a couple games this year where other teams dare him to shoot threes. There's a reason why they want him to shoot the 3-pointers on the team because of the starting five, he's the worst 3-point shooter. He's not terrible, but he's not great. So the Denver Nuggets, repeat aspirations are 100% tied to Jamal Murray being able to play. That's it. That's all there is to it. I have them at number 3 because honestly, when they're all healthy and going full steam ahead, they are the best team in the NBA. The only argument I'll potentially hear is Boston, and even then I will reject it. But with the injuries, with Murray being hurt, obviously the 8-6 record without him, I can't in good conscience put him at 1 or 2 because of that. So I'm not all the way a homer, just a little bit of a homer. Number 2, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is the best defense in the NBA. They have a budding superstar. Budding? Is he already a superstar? Either way, Anthony Edwards is awesome. He's the man. He is carrying that team. I like Minnesota a lot, and they've played like the second best team in the NBA. Maybe at times play like the first best team in the NBA. The Gobert trade starting to look way better than they did last year. Last year it was like, oh my god, they really traded all that for another center when they already have Karl Anthony Towns. Well, we're all eating our words because it's looking freaking ridiculous. Karl Anthony Towns has been playing really well, and I'm actually very proud of him. I'm very surprised and proud that he is let Anthony Edwards take the keys to the car, drive that franchise into the number 1 seed of the Western Conference, and he has been happy to put up 24 points a game or whatever it is on nights when Anthony Edwards decides to not score 35. So, I like Minnesota a lot. They have a good mix of young and old, right? They still have Conley at point guard. They have some guys that have been in the league a long time in Cat and Gobert. They have kind of the younger guys that are still ascending, right? And Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels. I like the Timberwolves a lot. And again, I hate the Timberwolves. They are a division rival, but they're really good. So game recognized game, I guess. Number 1, we have the Boston Celtics. This is the best starting 5 in the NBA, probably. The only one I think has an argument is Denver. You have Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis. So you're essentially talking 4 All-Stars in their starting lineup. Obviously, Kristaps isn't what he used to be. Drew is getting older, but still, you have 4 former All-Stars in their starting lineup. Jason Tatum's one of the better players in the NBA, obviously. Drew Holiday is awesome defensively. Derek White has been amazing this year. I really like Boston. Boston's really good. They scare me. I like them to go to the NBA Finals against the Nuggets. With them, really the only thing is injuries. That's the only kind of bugaboo that can bite them. Kristaps Porzingis, while I do think they could probably deal for a little bit without him, he has an injury history, which is not great. I think for a deep postseason run, they need him healthy. Boston Celtics number 1. I don't know if there's really any arguments you can have. Again, I think the only team you could potentially argue for number 1 would be Minnesota. But I mean, Boston's been amazing. That's essentially my New Year's power rankings 1 through 30. We grouped them. I guess we'll see what happens. We'll definitely revisit this. I think the power rankings make a lot of sense to do a couple times a year. Obviously before the season, kind of this 1/3 of the way mark. Do it kind of after the trade deadline once all the movements happened, and then one more right as we kind of head into the playoffs. So we'll be expecting an update to this, in what, mid-February, something like that. Probably late March, whatever. But yeah, I think that's it for me in this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back in a couple weeks with a new episode dropping. Until then, obviously follow me on Spotify, YouTube, all the socials that I am on. Twitter, Instagram. I think that's still active. And yeah, in a couple weeks we will probably do some trade deadline preview, and then probably talk about whatever the hot topic is in the NBA. So thanks for listening. Have an awesome week. Happy New Year.